Hello, hello, and dear friends on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, and of course our regular Zoom followers. Welcome back to another Wednesday edition of Getting Better at Being You, our weekly commitment to become better versions of ourselves. And let's be honest, there's room for improvement. Friends, today's discussion, let me just admit someone else into our room over here. Today's discussion is all about the laws of attraction. We all want to feel as though we are attractive, and we want to, God willing, attract other people as well, whether that's in relationships, in friendships. There are certain things that I've discovered through my counseling practice and working with young couples who are dating, engaged, and family therapy as well. There's some things that people do that makes them less attractive to their partners. And that's going to be today's discussion. I've made a list. Of course, this list is not conclusive. There's a lot more I can say. But I started to jot down some notes of things that I have found, the way we relate to other people and how we act towards other people. Sometimes things we do make us less attractive. And we want to be attractive to other people. Who doesn't want to be attractive to people they love and they respect and they're trying to build a relationship with? Now, although I've used the word attractive usually connotes a physical attraction. That happens to be true, but we're not going to talk about physical attraction, although it's definitely very deeply connected to everything I'm going to tell you. The attraction, my friends, we're going to be talking about today is an emotional attraction. I have a list that someone sent me of divorce statistics. And what you may think is what people would list as reasons why they end up getting divorced are actually not always that much. Physical attraction is not usually listed as one of the top reasons people end up splitting up, but emotional incompatibility is. But the two are connected. People we are emotionally connected to, there's a physical attraction that builds up as well. And people who we are not emotionally attracted to, people we don't respect, like being with, there's a physical repulsion that comes with that as well. So we're not talking physical attraction per se, but everything we're saying is going to have a physical compatibility component to it as well. Okay, so things that I have found from my counseling practice that people do that make you seem less attractive. Number one is that people don't know how to relax. People don't know how to relax. And people who are consumed with work, they're not invested in the relationship. They're invested in work, even if they're working for a good reason. They want to make money to make their spouse happy, their husband or wife, to make their children have a good living. However, it just doesn't work. If all the time you are constantly consumed with your work, when you come home, you just talk about work all the time. When you're at work, you don't check in with your spouse, with your loved one, your fiancé, whatever it is, and you're constantly in that world and you're not investing in their emotional bank, people are going to be less attracted to you. I'll tell you a personal story, which I think I've told before. I definitely wrote this story in my book on relationships and dating and marriage. It was actually this true story. The night before my wedding, I had a close friend who had flown out from London to visit me. And I was actually in my rabbinical course. So I was in the dormitories where I'd started to live again in my yeshiva. And there was a spare bed in the room. And my friend had flown in, a wonderful guy, successful business guy. And he had shared one of the beds in my bedroom when he came to New York from London. And we were talking and I was terrified, terrified the night before my wedding. Was I doing the right thing? Was it the right person? After 21 years, I can tell you, I did the right thing and it was the right person. But you know what it's like? Pre-wedding jitters. I was scared. And we got into conversation, and then suddenly he turned around to me and said, by the way, Lawrence, I didn't tell you, I'm getting a divorce. I was like, excuse me? He's like, yeah, I'm getting a divorce. I'm like, why would you tell me this the night before my wedding? Do you think I really need it? I didn't have the bandwidth to get through my own emotional stuff. I've got to deal with yours as well. I started to freak out, but I asked him what had happened. And you know what? I was very, very happy that he told me, because what he told me stayed with me. And I've used this a lot in my own personal relationships, but also when it comes to advising and counseling others. What he had done is the following. As soon as he got married, he started a business of giving loans, should we say. And he started to work very, very hard in this business during his first year of marriage. Now, he wasn't messing around. He wasn't going to nightclubs, or in those days, discos, right? He wasn't hanging out and messing around. But he spent his first year of marriage deeply, deeply involved in his career, trying to make this. It was very stressful. And he worked very, very hard. And he wasn't doing it for any other reason except to, bring home the money that he wanted for his future, for his wife and kids. Even though that was his motivation, it ended up ruining everything else. Now, there's a whole different discussion about the first year of marriage, especially where we really need today to invest our time in our relationships, especially the first year. By the way, the first year, the Shana Rishona, is important. Nowadays, the first year takes about 5 years. Actually, that was when I got married. Probably about 10 years now of effort just to get that first year right. But that's another discussion. However, the work had consumed him. He didn't know how to relax. He didn't know how to turn off. He didn't know how to give priority to his wife. He wasn't checking. Whenever she checked in with him, he was frustrated and irritated. It just didn't work. He was investing in their financial future, but he wasn't in the emotional future. It just messed up, and it wasn't to be. And by the time the counselors that I was not, he was just a friend of mine, got involved, who basically said, you've got to invest, you've got to give life, time and effort towards your spouse, it was too late. So that's number one. You don't know how to relax. There's time for work and there's time for not work and just chilling out. That's people are able to relax. It's just attractive. People want to hang out with you. They feel as though you're giving them attention that we all need and crave, especially today. On the flip side, another thing that makes people less attractive to you or attracted to you is clinginess. People who cling onto you. I have found that independence is attractive. Now, we're going to talk about too much independence, which is going to be another problem, but many people are just too clingy. Now, some people I've met and counseled like a partner. This may sound weird to some of you. They're like a partner who's jealous and needy. Personally, I don't get it. I find that very unattractive. And most people I've been in contact with do as well. Most people don't like that, right? They don't like people who are, and the word that's used is enmeshment. People who are enmeshed and constantly needy and constantly complaining and very clingy. No one likes that. People need independence. They need their own friends, their own personal time. They don't need to know where you are 24/7. But if they do need to know where you are 24/7, there's usually a problem, an insecurity that they have. But this enmeshment, this clinginess is very unattractive. As I said, people need space. They need to show that you are an independent being. And that's attractive to people. There needs to be a sign that I'm not constantly there. I'm giving you your space. You need time alone. You need your man cave or woman cave, whatever it is, right? To exercise, go to the gym. Actually, one of the signs that I found that people are not doing well in a relationship is when they give up on their independence. I used to go to the gym 2-3 times a week, but now I'm spending time with my wife a lot more. I don't know if that's so good. I mean, it sounds good, giving up in your personal time in order to give it to somebody else, but usually it's ineffectual. And it's a sign of a problem of clinginess, that you are not having space for your own self. And that's unattractive. When someone is constantly on you, that's not something that people like to have. On the flip side, something else that makes you less attractive is when you act aloof. Now, when you're young and you're a teenager, you want to act aloof, you're in high school or maybe college, However, it gets to a point where it's not attractive, actually. It shows you're being cold and you're distant, right? And people don't like that. People have a fear of being rejected, and everyone pretty much has a fear or feelings of, and I speak about this a lot because it's very, very big. Maybe it always was, I don't know, but it's especially true right now, a feeling of abandonment. We all have feelings of abandonment from our childhood, and maybe if we had good childhoods with great parents, but at some point we all feel abandoned. And when we get into relationships and we feel that abandonment, and that doesn't usually come around with a person just like walking out of the house. That's not usually how it happens. It's more subtle than that. It's people who are cold towards you, distant. They make themselves aloof. They're not there for your emotional care and benefit. Again, there's a balance, right? Because we just said before, clinginess makes you less attractive, but also acting aloof. There's got to be a fair balance where you're there, but you have a level of independence. But people don't like to feel abandoned. We all feel abandoned. We all have to leave our homes, right? Leave our parents, hopefully, physically, geographically, but also emotionally to find our own lives. And many people I know have a lot of trouble just, trying to make that break from their parents in order to give their love towards their spouses and their loved ones and their children. It's another discussion which we've spoken about before. However, acting aloof is not the solution. And this cold resentment that we kind of give towards each other, it makes you less physically attractive as well. Actually, all these things, which I'm talking about today, although they're emotional conditions, make you less attractive. And people do not want to be physically intimate with someone who is displaying these unattractive ways of not knowing how to relax, constantly being on, too clingy and too aloof as well. Okay, number 4 actually comes in many, many forms, but I'm going to call it oversharing. Oversharing makes you less attractive. I got so many stories on this. I actually got a call from someone very recently from out of state who called me and asked me if he did the right thing. And I'll tell you what he said to me, and you can make your own judgments, and I'm sure you're all going to have your own opinions on this as well. But I found that people who overshare, whether they're on their first date, their 5th date, or married for 5, 10 years, or 20 years, it gets too much. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Your spouse is not your therapist. You don't need to dump all of your emotional baggage on your wife or husband. I know you think, well, what are they there for? Right? They're my loved one, so I'll share everything that's in my heart. But you don't want to do that. You don't want to share every fear, every concern, every weird thing that's going on in your head. And there's a lot of weird stuff that we think about all day. And some of it's understandable and some of it's pretty gross. But you don't need to dump all of that onto your loved ones. I got so many stories, some I cannot even say publicly, but I'll share one with you. So this guy called me up very recently, and he said he went on a date with a girl, and the date was fine, and second and third date. On the 3rd date, for whatever reason, this is a true story, this girl said to this young man, oh, by the way, I've not been to the dentist in 10 years. And he found this very gross, and he broke up with her over this. And a friend of his called me up to say that he made a mistake. He called me up as well, and he asked me whether he did the right thing. Well, at this point, it was too late because he had broken up already. But I guess he was looking for some kind of, validation or affirmation for his decision. Well, whatever I told him. But I do have to think that she overshared. You don't need to tell everyone all of your, sorry to say, gross habits, right? I mean, this not going to the dentist in 10 years is more than just a sign of, not going to the dentist, but it's a sign of someone who's not very much into self-care and self-love. So, and there was other things that she had explained to him which kind of, corroborated what she was saying. But you don't need to overshare. Nobody needs to know. I know people, for example, who feel as though they need to tell their boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, husband, wife, the details of every relationship they've been in until they've met them. You don't. You do not need to tell your spouse about every single boyfriend, girlfriend, every detail of it that you went through until you got married. Oh, but this is my past. I need to tell them everything. No, that's oversharing. They don't need to know everything. But then what is a loved one all about? A loved one is all about finding someone who you can share your future aspirations, your visions, your desires for the future. But oversharing everything from your past, I mean, some things you should share. There's certain things which are fundamental to who you are as a person. There are some things that really define us, things from our past I'm talking about, or even our present, that people need to know. Certain things that really are fundamental about who we are. But oversharing in every relationship, before we get married, take a seat. I want to tell you about every single girlfriend I've ever had and what I did to them. Like, no, you really don't need that. You don't need to do that. No one needs to hear it. And even when you do want to share something, sometimes people blow it out of proportion. I'm going to give you an example. Some people want to share something they did as a child, for example, and they'll make it very dramatic. Sit down. I need to tell you something. And I don't want you to get angry. And I don't want you to get upset. And they make it this big conflated thing, which maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just something you did, which you're not very proud of. I mean, whether you need to share it or not, I would check with somebody else. Right? If you have a therapist or rabbi or whatever it is, I don't care. But check with someone else whether this is pertinent for your future together. In many cases, it's not, and there's no benefit you sharing it. Every time a money concern comes to your mind, which for most people comes up, I don't know, 10, 20 times a day. How am I going to afford that? Am I making enough money? There's a lot of fear that comes up. We can talk about money, actually. It's its own topic, actually, in of itself, which I may do in the future. But fears over money come to all people, and that's almost irrespective of how much money you have. I know people who have a lot of money and still have a lot of fear connected to it, and people have no money and a lot of fear connected to it. But if every time you think about money, you worry about it, you kind of share it with your spouse, then you end up not having a very healthy relationship. I mean, once a month, my wife and I sit down and we freak out about money. That's basically it. When it comes to paying the bills, which my wife does, thankfully, right? We go through it like, oh no, I can't believe, are we spending that much money on Amazon? Is that even possible? Am I really supplying Jeff Bezos with another billion? Does he need my billion too? It can't be. And we have this big freak out, but we leave our money in a box, not a physical box, right? But an emotional, mental box that we visit, because if every time we freak out about money, we share it, we overshare it with our loved ones, it just gets too much. So oversharing, I have found, makes people less attracted to you because you don't need to share all of the ins and outs and every detail. So had I known this young girl who spoke to this guy who called me up, I would have said, he doesn't need to know you have not been to the dentist in 10 years. It's just not important information. Go to the dentist and tell him you went to the dentist yesterday or whatever it is. But some things you just don't need to share, okay? Especially previous relationships. I found that being judgmental makes someone very unattractive, right? If you want someone to be attracted to you, don't judge them. No one likes to be judged, okay? No one likes to feel as though what they're doing or saying, right? Or backseat drivers, right? Whether in the car or in life, right? Judging you, it's really, really has a negative impact upon your relationship. Just let people be. We know you're fantastic. We know you're great, right? We know you're but just to constantly judge other people and pick on every fault that they have, as the Gemara says, before you remove the piece of wood from someone else's eye, take the log out of your eye. I believe that's the expression from the Gemara, from the Talmud. No one likes to feel judged. Right? We know you're right, we know you're smart and amazing and great, but you don't need to judge everyone else, especially the person you're trying to be in a love relationship with when it comes to this as well. And when I sit down with couples, right, I find that one person will, instead of discussing their own problems, will judge the other person. Rarely does that work well. Connected to this, actually, by the way, this is not an over-exhaustive list. I could talk about this a lot longer, but just the ones that came to my mind for these, 20, 30 minutes. taking things too personally. Now, I've mentioned this before. We are not rational beings. We are emotional beings. Even the smartest people out there, and I deal with a lot of people who are much, much smarter than me, right? They've made a lot of money, and although that's not really a sign of being smart, by the way, they have PhDs and they have successful businesses and all the rest of it. And yet, even those and they seem so rational and calculative, they're not rational beings. The human condition is emotional. I truly believe that. We need to remember that, okay? So many times people will say things and they'll react to what other people say and they'll take things too personally. Again, we're going to take things personally because we're emotional beings. If someone curses you out or shouts at you or insults you, it's going to hurt you. However, when people take things too personally and we take it as everything becomes a personal attack, we end up defending ourselves, we end up building walls around ourselves, you know? And we become, I think the expression you hear today a lot is, you know, everyone's turned into a snowflake, right? I'm going to melt as soon as someone says something. Now, when we're younger, we become very sensitive to that. You know, most teenagers today, from those teenagers that I don't work with that many teenagers, but when I do, well, I guess in my school I do, but they get very, you know, there's a lot of low self-esteem out there. Actually, it's very chronic and very debilitating. But at some point, I feel like saying, just don't take it personally. It's not about you. They're just talking, right? They're just saying something, you know, and everyone has got some kind of emotional damage that they're carrying around, and you'll say something and it'll spark some explosion in them. I think I've given the metaphor before. If I have, I apologize, but I was on vacation. I was a rabbi at a Pesach program, and we were abroad somewhere very hot. That's pertinent to the story. And as I was getting out of the elevator one day, I brushed against a person's arm. This lady, by mistake. And she went, "Ow, Rabbi, that really hurt. What'd you do that for?" And I was thinking to myself, get a life. I just touched your arm. What are you getting so bent out of shape for? I didn't say anything because, you know, I'm the rabbi of the program. And I kind of apologized. And then later on, she came up to me and said, "I want to apologize," she said, "for my overreaction. But I was outside today and it was very hot and I got sunburn. And as you touched me, it kind of triggered off this really painful sunburn reaction." And it made me realize, my friends, that you know what? Everyone today, somewhere in their personality, is suffering from emotional sunburn. And you'll say something and you'll trigger something that will just lead to, and you'll be like, whoa, where did that come from, right? And the answer is it comes from a million places. It could be something their teacher said, their therapist said. It could be they had a bad morning. Who knows? It could be a million reasons why people react the way that they do. Okay, but taking things too personally in relationship, it makes you less attractive. So, excuse me for saying this. I know this may not be too PC nowadays, but sometimes suck it up. It's not about you. It's really not about you. So I got all offended, someone was shouting at me in the elevator, but it wasn't about me. It was about her and her own, well, physical sunburn, but emotional sunburn too. Next, which most people would not realize, but there's something that makes people less attractive to you, and that is what I call toxic positivity. People who are always effusive and always positive, and there's always the good side about everything. Now, it's good to be positive, no doubt about it, because that's how we get through life. If we're always negative, negativity, we're going to assume, is also very unattractive, but too much positivity gets too much as well. What do I mean by that? Well, you know when you share an experience with someone, something bad that happens to you, and immediately they kind of jump out and say, "No, it's all in your head. Oh, just forget about it. You know, it's all okay. Everything's going to be okay." But I'm trying to share a feeling, a frustration, an irritation, something that's real. I'm not imagining it. I may be overreacting to it, but it's a real thing. But these people have toxic positivity. They don't let you allow your negative feelings to process. If someone shares a frustration in their life, I know you want to say, "Oh, just reframe it. It's all going to be good. And maybe eventually you should say that. But at least for the first part, just hear them. Just let them get it out. You know, this toxic positivity, like, oh, it's going to be fantastic. Don't worry about it. Like, but it's not. Right now, I'm in pain. It's really upsetting to me. Right? I just got hit on the arm. You're going to be fine. Right? But I understand that it's painful. Right? At least allow them. And when people immediately jump in, and I know someone actually who is a therapist, and they told me that they used to do this, right? And they used to be like, yeah, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. Let's just forget about it and just move on. But just give people a little space, just a small window of grieving to let them go, you know, through their process. And then you can start to reframe, help them understand it. But toxic positivity, although it may sound like a strange expression because positivity seems a great thing, and it is, but there's a limit. Give people a chance. Yeah? And finally, something that definitely makes you less attractive to other people is feeling superior to other people. No one likes it when everyone else or someone they're in a relationship with feels, oh, I can do that better. You're not so good at it. Right? There's two ways to lift yourself up, right? Or make yourself above someone else. One is to push someone, right? Like when you're a kid, you push someone down, right? Or you step up, right? And you lift them up with you, right? That's kind of like, you know, the childish way of making yourself superior is to push someone down. Unfortunately, we take that into older life, and if we don't physically push them down, we emotionally push them down. That's really not the way it's going to be. What you want to do is lift yourself up, because we all need to feel good about ourselves, and then lift that person up with us. Okay? People who feel superior, if you try to feel superior to someone else, they're not going to be attracted to you. They're not going to be an emotional and definitely not a physical relationship with you either. All right? Even if you are married for many years, everyone wants to feel as though everyone they're with is on the same level and the same bandwidth that they are as well. Let's just recap everything we said today, and if any other ideas come out, I'll tell you. So things that make people less attractive, we start first of all not knowing how to relax. Right? I gave the story of this guy who spent his first year or so of marriage constantly working for his family, for his future, but wasn't ever able to turn off. They were constantly on, and they were able to just like, okay, breathe, relax. And by the way, it's not just husbands and wives. Right? We want our children to be attracted to us, to want to hang out with us, to be in our space. If we're constantly tense and never know how to relax, no one wants to be around such a person either. And I know many kids who will move out of home very young because they can't handle the constant oomph their parents have, not knowing how to just chill out and just mess around, be funny and be silly. They're constantly on. Number two is clinginess. Right? People are clinging to you, who are constantly jealous and needy. It's very, very unattractive. And some people like it for some reason, I don't know why, but most people don't like that. And the opposite extreme, people are aloof, right? They want to be cool and cold and distant because they want to feel you giving the effort towards the relationship. It's unattractive. Oversharing, no matter where you are in your life, in your relationships, right? Date 1 to marriage after 20 years. I know someone who revealed to his wife certain desires that he had, right? Which he just didn't need to reveal to his spouse. Oversharing. Share it with your therapist, friends. Maybe it needs to be shared with a spouse, but many times you don't need to do that. Being judgmental, right? No one likes to feel judged, right? It makes you less attractive. You're constantly judged. Even if you think you're right, even if you are right, no one needs that either. Taking things too personally. Again, we all take things personally, but too personally, becoming a snowflake, at some point, you're going to have to thicken your skin. Don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's about them. Toxic positivity. Constantly being positive. It's all good. Oh, it's all in your head. Oh, you're going to get over it. You don't need that. Give people a small window to grieve and just get it out of their system, and feeling superior to others as well. All these things really don't lend themselves to somebody wanting to be an emotional, physical relationship with you. We want to get rid of them so that we can remain attractive. Okay, thank you all for joining. Hope you enjoyed. This will be available on Instagram and Facebook Live. You can definitely share it with friends and loved ones. I'll see you all, God willing, next Tuesday night for our next program. Thanks for joining.